La Lanterna, a spotlight in Italian football, is a podcast that dives into the beautiful game seen from the eyes of two fans from the oldest team in Italy's point of view. My name is Fabrizio Cardone, Canadian and Genovese, together with my friend Matt Killen, an American-born and Genoa fan. Every week, we'll tell you all you need to know about the only team you need to know about, Genoa CFC. Plus, we'll have guests and provide updates from around the magical world of Italian football. After the beautiful notes of the Stadio Luigi Ferraris for the 38th match day against Bari, Guasto d'Amore, with Bresh right there, benvenuti to La Lanterna podcast. Hey Matt, how you doing?
Ciao Fabry, how you doing? Doing well.
We took 1 week off, which was well deserved by many.
Yeah.
It was essentially just to take a breather, back-to-back season. Sometimes we had double episodes because of the midweek. So what the heck? Why not? Obviously, we have some matches that we still need to be talking about, which now starting to be a little bit old because also the playoffs are underway. But so before I guess we go to match day 38, what a match was Genoa Bari.
I mean, what the hell? Like, for effectively a dead rubber match. It was maybe one of the better matches of the whole season. There were incredible goals from both sides. An amazing, as you mentioned, and as we just heard, performance by Gradinato Nord and the whole of the Marassi really in supporting Genoa in the match. Yeah, 4-3. At the last match of the season, really nothing for either side to be playing for too much anyway. But a fantastic game, and what a great way to put a capstone on the season for Genoa.
Well, I was definitely not expecting anything to the level. If you remember, we were talking about with Jeremy, I was expecting something a little bit more flat based on the fact that Bari was going into the playoffs. I don't know if they were resetting or not the yellow cards. We didn't remember. I didn't even look into it, and I apologize for that. But I'm sure I would have been afraid for injuries, anything to that matter. But I think it was, like, as you said, a beautiful match. One goal more beautiful than the other one. And then essentially they all played without that weight on their backs. It was just a wonderful match from both sides.
Yeah, and this was one, like, I think looking up to this match, it was a question mark a little bit, like, will Gilardino play a little bit more rotation again, as we saw as well in Frosinone? Are we going to see a little bit more of that? And we saw some of that, but I think in the whole, it was a really strong side. Bari, I think, did likewise and also put out a strong unit. And as you say, it ended up being a fantastic match, and I think had a goal of the season candidate. And for us Genoano, I think there was a different goal of the season candidate that we'll remember for probably a long time.
For sure. So let's start with the lineup. I was quite surprised there. I was hoping or thinking that they would have given some minutes anyways for Semper, but didn't happen.
Yeah.
So the formation was not our typical 3-5-2. I remember now listening to Gilardino's press conference, and he said that he's doing some trials, different type of tactics. So the formation was actually a 4-3-1-2.
Yes.
So at the back, we had Sabelli to the left, Dragusin Vogliacco in the middle, and Hefti to the right. Good to see our boy Hefti back. In the midfield, we had Strutman, Badel, and Jagello.
Jagello is the interesting one in this. Did you think he played more of like a roving? Because I still always think of him as more of like an attacking midfielder, but I know we've deployed him in the central position sometimes.
So yeah, he was a little bit more concerned, but he did give that verve that sometimes you needed, that you see in Jagello while you don't see it in other players.
Yeah, right. That's the positive of having him there.
I definitely see him, and we'll have a different episode talking about maybe the next one. We'll talk about who's coming, who's leaving, but we'll leave that for next episode. So the 4-3-1 one is actually in the center, just behind the two strikers is Albert Gudmundsson.
Yep.
By the way, MVP of the season for Genoa.
Fantastic.
100%. Even surpassed Coda with respect to the goals, even though Coda did a wonderful match, 2 assists by him, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
And again, to the strikers now, Coda and Salcedo. So that was the surprise, Salcedo. Not only the formation itself, the module, sorry, but specifically Salcedo. We were expecting that there could have been some players that would have started at the beginning. What did you think about the whole entire starting 11?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't too surprised to see Salcedo in the lineup because, of course, like I was expecting a little bit more of that rotation this final match of the season, not as quite as much to play for. I mentioned a little bit kind of the interestingness of having Yagillo playing in that kind of central position and also just trying a different sort of overall approach to the match, aside from the 3-5-2, which I still think isn't exactly a 3-5-2, but it's sort of what we've been playing most of the year. So that was probably the other thing that kind of raises your eyebrow a little bit. But I mean, the interesting thing with this is like we kind of saw it all season long. Coda, the assist maker, like how many times this season I think we were all expecting him to have this crazy like 20-goal campaign or something. But it's another match where really effective at being the link-up guy and helping kind of provide that assist on some fantastic goals that we had in this match.
So let's go with the goals. We end the first half 2-1 for Genoa.
Yeah. And then I'm just like looking at the Sabelli goal again, and it's just like absolutely ridiculous. I mean, so the match starts pretty, like you said, it did start pretty open. Gudmundsson, you might remember, had this kind of really good early chance. It was a difficult one. He chested the ball. It kind of just narrowly wide. And then not very long after that, you have this just absolutely amazing rocket. Kind of Sabelli's coming into the play at the kind of end of the progression and just puts his whole foot through it. Nothing the keeper can do, just a complete top corner strike. And just, it's one of those things you just love to see. It wasn't long. You see Fabry have, again, this was one of those goal of the season moments, perhaps, depending on your rating of free kicks, but a fantastic free kick from them leveled the match. And so that makes it 1-1. And then you see our man Gudmundsson getting it back for us again. Again, as you mentioned, just another very well-deserved goal. And 2-1 to Genoa, as you mentioned, at the half.
This Gudmundsson, which was a beautiful touch, left, right foot in, beautiful. It was the only goal of the match in the box.
Yeah.
Everything else was outside the box.
Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable. It was a fantastic match. And yes, the technique on that goal was just absolutely crazy. Started from a free kick as well, but just to be able to control the ball that way and fire it, that power, that pace, that accuracy near corner. Again,
that guy has talent.
Yes.
Undoubtedly. All right, so the first half ended, and we go into the second half, which I guess we played about, if I'm looking at correctly, about 20-25 minutes without any goal. It seemed that it was like everything fine, that it was perhaps going to be ending that way because chances were still there. Even if you look at the stats, it was quite open for both. Shots in total, 26 for Genoa and 12 for Bari. On target, 8 for Genoa and 5 for Bari. Possession was almost equal, 53 to 47 for Genoa. Total passes 503 to 457 for Bari. Passes accuracy, it's 87 Genoa, 88 Bari. So very even if you look at it from that perspective. Mm-hmm. But at the 25th minute, so that was the 68th minute actually, yes. Precise.
Yeah, that's right.
Again, from outside the box, Benedetti does another wonder goal.
I mean, just another screamer. And it's just like, how many screamers can we get in this match? And like, again, there's nothing you can really, it's not like even necessarily a bad play on Genoa's part. Like this, it just kind of happens. There's having another player coming in, the ball kind of moves a little bit, and it's just an absolute bomb from 30 plus yards out. Fantastic strike. And all of a sudden we're level.
7 minutes after, Matt, what happened?
Oh, Khedira. Yeah, it was.
No.
No, before that, Ekuban. Yes. So this goal, so I'm just happy to see Ekuban score. I know like not everybody's big on Ekuban. They're not big on should he be with us next season. No, we're going to talk about that later. But this curler, again, like there's just how many great goals are we going to see in this match? It was unfreaking believable.
Listen, you're right. There are lots of Genoanis that are not necessarily fond for Ekuban, but I can test that the whole Ferraris was totally in a boast of cheer and scream for Ekuban's goal. What I'm trying to say with this is like the amazing affection by many for Ekuban, including us, us is incredible.
I mean, I know maybe there are factions or whatever, but I still kind of understand it that way too, that there's still that kind of connection with him and the fan base. But I mean, this goal is it's almost ridiculous. I mean, the other few goals that happen, you see like this, it's power, it's placement, it's all this stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is he naturally left-footed? Is that his dominant foot? Because he hits this ball and it's almost like a half free kick type of a thing where it's bending and it just kind of bends itself right into the far post. And again, from 30 plus yards out, it's outside of the box. And it's not one of those kind of line drive power goals, which are always like really fun. You see like the net kind of completely kind of get drawn back and everything else. But just to the shape on this ball and to just watch the trajectory of that thing, that must have felt so good when he made contact with that ball. You know, that had to have been just like the total sweet spot. All of a sudden, again, we're back up 3-2.
He was super happy. You could see the joy in his face, which was just worthwhile just to see that.
Absolutely.
Then
and running away too. You can always tell like when the players start wheeling away before the ball goes in the back of the net. It's a good thing.
Exactly. Then 8 minutes later, at the 86th minute.
Yes. So now I jumped the gun here. This was the Khedira goal, which seemed like it kind of doomed the match to be a point and a really entertaining point at that. I think in the end, I'm not sure there'd be too many Genoano that would look at it and say the point is a fair result.
I would say yes, right?
I mean, I personally believe that much. This one, it falls a little bit more so in maybe we could have done more defensively to close this ball down. There's kind of like a layoff pass that was a little bit loose. Like a couple of our guys reacted a little bit late, but again, fantastic stretch from Khedira and another kind of longer range effort. I think it was either just outside the box. Yeah, it was just outside the box again. And all of a sudden we end it, we think, at 3-3.
At the 90th minute. That's what the whole stadium was waiting for. Why? What happened was there was a change. Two actually interesting changes happened. So the first one was Martinez gets subbed. I was like, okay, that's weird. That's very bizarre. Just to give the few minutes of glory of put it in his resume for Agostino, which is our third goalie.
Yep.
And I thought that was a very brilliant touch by Gilardino, if you ask.
Yeah, I mean, it's an unusual one. I think like how you manage a player like that, it's challenging, right? You know, you have to imagine Agostino had played throughout the season. He's probably trained throughout the season, played a contributing role behind the scenes and not a player we ever saw appear in a match. And so for a player in that capacity, it means something to kind of be out there. You wouldn't do that with Semper. Semper would be like, fuck you, like I should have started this match. But and it's not anything against Agostino, but this is a way of acknowledging the work basically that he's done throughout the season. I agree with you. I think it's a nice touch, and especially because it's at home and the mood, of course, at this period of time, even though it was level, it was still, I think, a positive mood in the Ferraris. It wasn't a bunch of angst and, well, we just threw away, 3 points type of a thing.
No one gives caps just because. So this fact of giving one cap to this player in Serie B,
that's true. Yeah,
it's important because you want something to build from that.
Yes, but nonetheless, it's meaningful. It's experience. It's something he can put on his resume as he was, in fact, very truthfully, a Serie B player.
Goodmanson out, so it was worthwhile also to give him that sense of applause.
Absolutely.
But the whole stadium was waiting for Criscito to come in.
But we're bearing the lead here because what ends up happening at the end of the match was the greatest part of the match itself. And by the way, I feel like Badel has done this like multiple times this season. Am I making that up? I don't know how, and I'm not trying to say he's diving. I think he has this crazy knack for doing this, but it's late. I think it's close to the 95th minute or somewhere thereabouts, kind of a driving run. Badel gets pulled down, very obvious tug of the shirt. I think everyone, as soon as you see that, you know exactly what is happening. Whole next set of events.
Fendrup is fueling the action for Genoa. Puskás. Badel is entering the box. Badel, penalty kick. Penalty for Genoa. And that's the situation that the entire stadium was waiting, because now Mimmo Criscito can score the final goal of his career just under the Gradinata. It's a fairy tale ready to be written by Mimmo Criscito.
So he goes down. It's a very clear penalty.
To be honest, it's not like this obvious penalty, because in other scenarios, even if the ref wouldn't have given it to us, nobody would have pulled a stunk, right?
Well, for me, it seems like when you see a guy running like that and he gets pulled, like it wasn't one of those things where he like tripped over his own legs. I mean, to be fair, like this was a match that didn't have anything riding on it. So in that sense, yes, I agree with you that like you can't really be kind of nonplussed about the whole thing. I guess like he does kind of embellish a little bit of the tug pull as he's running in there. But I mean, you see a very obvious kind of, there's a hand pull and he's in the box and he's running free. And so that's where it comes from. But anyway, all this sets up the main stage for the whole moment. So you mentioned Mimo coming on, knew this was going to be his last match. So it was incredibly important that he got time. It was fantastic that it was at home at the Marassi at a packed stadium.
Only set. Kršić is on the spot. Kršić, no mistakes. He writes the end of this wonderful tale that has been his career. Mimo Kršić scores for Genoa at last attempt, the last penalty kick of his career, just under the Gradinata, and Genoa now take the lead again.
With a bunch of fans who have watched him fight so hard for the Genoa colors for so long, and of course he is the man for the job, for the penalty. He converts it and really puts a capstone, I think, on his career and goes out the way we all would have wanted him to. And I know, again, there are some corners. I don't really believe this is mainstream or that. I think this is greatly exaggerated. Mimo is too much of a drama queen person. He takes away from the locker room. I mean, this is one of the few guys that stuck around this team in our worst days, which were numerous over the last several seasons. I can't claim to know all of them because really I've only been following since around the 2016 season. But since that period of time, they've not been very good seasons. And Mimo has been there front and center the whole time. He's been the captain, I think, for just about that entire period of time, at least when he's been in the side. Just a wonderful way. And I have to say this because we were talking about it off camera too. The same match week, I hate to pivot to this type of a thing, but some were saying how wonderful it was that Quagliarella scores for his last match for Sampdoria and he has this whole thing. And for me, it's like you guys are focusing on the wrong player here. Like you're missing out on Domenico Kršić and what he's done for Genoa and how he's been really like a rock for this team and what it's meant for the fan base. You can talk about Quagliarella all you want. I don't really get that enamored personally by his career. Maybe it's just because I'm a Genoano now, but I think it was a fantastic way for him to end the season. It was great to do it at home. Such a meaningful end to a really, I think, important season for Genoa. I mean, we'll see really what this means, of course, when we look at Serie A next season and what the trajectory is, but I don't know. There's just so much to take away from a fan perspective, and it was wonderful that we had an ending to the season like that I think was very representative of what this campaign meant for the Genoa fans.
Just to add to what you just said, I'm going to say it straightforward. A lot of Genoani are not too fond for Kršić. Let's say that if their reason is because he missed that important penalty at the end of the match at the derby last year.
Oh, come on.
Well, your memory is short, and that's not how you judge a person.
I mean, I get it. I don't like that stuff either, but right, there's so many other things that are going on.
No, you said that right. Like he was really a trooper since the beginning. I can remember him back. I'm going to just think it was like 2007, I think, his first debut with Genoa. He was like 17 or something like that. And since then, I will always remember he got called up in the Nazionale. Then he had that spell, Zenit in Russia. Then he came back. He could have gone to many other teams. One above all I can remember that was really looking for them was Fiorentina. But no, he decided to come to Genoa because Genoa was his team. You know, a lot of are saying there's no more players like the ones that really have the colors embedded in their skin and so on. Well, he did. Even when he left for Toronto, he wanted to stay. It was after the relegation, so there was a cleanup in act, and he took it, and he went with his friend. That's one of his faults, in my opinion, is being friend with Insigne, but that's my opinion. But then halfway through, he again was called to come and help because we had a serious problems on the left back, and he came with a minimum possible being able to get, I think it was like $1,800 a month, which is ridiculous for any soccer player, even probably at the Serie A level. And he came. So he's my captain. As I think I posted it once on social media. He is definitely the captain after Marco Rossi.
Yeah. Well, and then of course Signorini too. But yes,
before him was was
Yeah,
always
right.
that was understood.
Yeah. That did not need to be said. That's how I see him too, completely. And I just think it's just so great that it's actually, of course, there was that moment last season in probably much more pressure cooked situation that was just like a knife in all of our stomachs when we watched that happen. And obviously this is not exactly the same stakes, but it was kind of poetic to see it happen again at Marassi and again in front of the Nord and to score that way and to have that moment. I think
it was meant to be. A lot of people even said, oh, it's all fake. It was all like, you can't really plan everything. It was a movie. That's how I see it. It was perfect. Picture perfect. Now let's listen quickly to an audio clip from our friend Jeremy, the Brit Fabry fan, that left us a comment on the upcoming match, but also a few words from the past match of Genoa against Bari.
Hi guys, it's Jeremy here from Puglia. Just a quick note before your latest podcast. Just to say that we really enjoyed the shootout with Genoa on the very last day of the season. We watched it in a pizzeria with quite a few people, and absolutely nobody in the pizzeria, including the staff, thought that was a penalty at the end, which I thought might amuse you. Nonetheless, great night for you guys. As regard to the playoffs, we've got our tickets for tomorrow night. 46,000 tickets have already been sold with a day to go, so we're hoping to top 50,000. I have to say we're all very nervous because Südtirol will be incredibly difficult to beat. Bari played very poorly in the first leg up at Bolzano, and we were all rather disappointed. However, this is a great chance for them to shake off that big crowd hoodoo, and hopefully they'll put in a good performance. I shall be posting a short vlog when I'm there. I don't know when it'll get out because it's always very difficult to have a signal, but we'll see how we go. So we're all rather nervous and excited. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good night and a good podcast and are putting your feet up and looking forward to the summer. Take care.
Thank you, Jeremy. Good luck on the playoffs. May the best one win. Now, Matt, going back to our conversation, we were talking about
I think we were talking about this, and many know, we had a gathering amongst the Genoa Club New York after the season and did a nice little procession for Ardoriano in New York, just because.
So let's say that quickly.
The respectful thing to do.
So what happened in New York?
This is all, I have to give every credit to all of the Genoa Club New York group, especially Daniele, Riccardo, Francesca, like everyone that showed up. It was totally, I think, the brainchild of Daniele and Riccardo to basically bring a coffin to Times Square and to march it from Columbus Circle, which I think maybe many know, but in New York we do have, there aren't that many places anymore in America that have a Christopher Columbus statue associated with them, but we have a pretty big one and a whole kind of area named for it. So a bunch of us kind of gathered with some bees and letter B's in the Buzzarchiati colors and coffins in the same and marched all the way down and turned a bunch of heads. I think Daniele said when he got on the bus driver looked at him weird, like, this isn't Halloween or something, what's going on? But I'm bringing this up not for the sake of embellishing myself, but because, and by the way, it was a whole lot of fun. We ended up talking to a bunch of people who recognized the colors and were talking about how their father used to work in Genova or whatever the story might have been and was a Genoa fan. But when we were kind of having lunch beforehand, we were talking about how at the end of the season last year, there was this kind of turn in the fans in like a positive way, where there started to become more of a, okay, we're all Genoano, we're backing the club. We are going to show that we're not going to be intimidated by the shitty stuff we're watching on the pitch, and we're going to be that much louder. And, being the favorites in Serie B changes the dynamic, of course, in a major way. But I just thought it was kind of amazing for the season to end the way it did with this performance, with Crescito kind of being the game, literally winning the game for the club after already seeing so many other amazing moments, the promotion celebration throughout the streets of Genova, the much larger funeral processions for Sampdoria that happened throughout Genova than the one that happened in New York. But still, obviously, there's still actual fights and factions that are happening happening between Genoa supporters, but you see much more of that connected, positive action happening. And I thought it was great because this season felt like a really needed season where we continued that positive momentum in the end, and had a season that I think most Genoa would be proud of. So
gave us time to regroup, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a regrouping, but I also think there's something happening between the club and the fans that for me at least feels very different than what I remember from before.
Absolutely, 100%.
And it's not to say that there wasn't a connection. We weren't close to the club beforehand, but there's a different kind of outpouring and a relationship, and there's still that angst before a match. There's still the maybe pessimism as a match is happening, or I've been the first to criticize many players on the team throughout the season, but I think that there's a different thing brewing there, and it was just kind of cool to see the season end on basically the same note.
It's one thing that I wanted to point out, the fact that it's going to be a little bit not difficult, sorry, let me rephrase that. It's going to take a little time in order to get rid of that label that we have based on what Preziosi gave to Genoa, the team that always gets relegated, or the team that is close to relegation, or the team that buys a player and then it sells it within 6 months, team that makes a new team every transfer market. It'll take some time, but sometimes no words speak louder than actually what happens. The new ownership has shown great changes compared to before. It's still work in progress because there's still a lot to happen. But one thing I wanted to remind you is, especially if you remember back in the match at home against Regina, we're getting closer to the hot end of the season. They asked for people to show at the Marassi and show their support for the team, and they called for that. And what was that, the record season at that point with 30,000 tickets, if you remember.
Yeah, I mean, and there has been, like you said too, there's still a ways to go for us to prove the footballing side has really been rectified and changed. But I think it's already pretty objectively clear that we're not chopping and changing all the time. Okay, yes, again, we had 2 managers this season. We've not quite gotten out of our ways, but there's a reason to see that kind of foundation hopefully working out, and it's going to be another, again, we keep teasing this next podcast, but it's going to be, I think, a really critical summer transfer market. What are we doing? Which players are we going to keep? How many from the youth system can we depend on? We're really going to be leveling up, I think, in competition, and it's not to say that Serie B was not strong, but it's just different when you're playing against Juventus and in Milan and Inter and Napoli, and you have those matches twice a season. Those are all tough points to get at those grounds. I didn't even talk about Roma and Lazio and Atalanta and others. So we have to up our game. We have to kind of make the progression from what was really a positive season and a lot of warm and fuzzies in the 22-23 campaign. But that's something we'll worry about in future weeks. And for now, I think it's just a good way to end the season.
Well, make no mistake, we are back. Sorry for our absence for 1 year, but Genoani, let's remember, let's don't expect the 3rd spot, the 5th spot next year. The goal is, and we'll talk about it throughout the summer anyways, the goal is to have a very comfortable season, mid-table-ish sort of thing, but not to fight for relegation. All right. Match day 38. So this was the last match of Serie B. So we salute Serie B with the following matches. A lot of teams we knew still had things to happen. We still had to understand who was going to be within the playoffs. We still had to understand who was going to be in the playouts. But essentially, the numbers happened. So Cittadella Como ended 0-0. Perugia Benevento ended 3-2. Did not help Perugia. We'll talk about the standings right after. Genoa Bari, we talked about it throughout 4-3. Then we had Parma Venezia ended 2-1 for the Ducali. Then we had Modena Südtirol ended 2-1 for Modena, and that made Südtirol lose their 4th spot. Ternana Frosinone 2-3, so confirms the 1st spot for Frosinone. Cosenza Cagliari 0-1, which condemned Cosenza to the playouts, and Cagliari to the 5th spot. And I forgot Parma to the 4th spot before, but Palermo Brescia ended 2-2, leaving Brescia now in the playouts. Regina 1, Ascoli 0. That brought Regina into the playoffs. And last but not least, Pisa 1, Spal 2, letting the Pisani out of the playoffs. So that ends season 2022-2023 for Serie B as follows. First, Frosinone with 80 points, Genoa second with 73, Bari, so this is the two semi-finalists of the playoffs, Bari at 65 and Parma at 60. Fifth spot is for Cagliari at 60 points. Sixth spot is Südtirol, 58. Regina 7th at 50. Mind you, Regina with a 5-point deduction would have still stayed at the 7th spot anyways. And last spot for the playoffs was Venezia at 49. Cutting out Palermo, 9th spot, 49. 48 for Modena, 10th spot. 11th spot for Pisa at 47, together with Ascoli and Como all at 47. Ternana is at 14th spot with 43, together with Cittadella 43, safe from the playouts. Now, the two playouts spots are for Brescia at 40, together with Cosenza at 40 as well. And then, sadly, salute the Serie B going to the relegated now to Serie C. Our 18th spot for Perugia. Last year they were in the playoffs. Spal 38 with 9 golan, and Benevento, which was another semi-finalist at the playoffs from last year. Incredible. This was Serie B 2022-23. No one would have ever expected such a competitive. I mean, there were high expectations and high possibilities based on the quality of the teams that were there. A lot of Serie A teams that were in this season, and the fact we said this throughout. Perugia, Spal, Benevento, 39, 38, and 35 points. These are huge amount of points, and they are still relegated. Anyways, beautiful year.
Unbelievable season. I mean, you look top to bottom, and there's just so much there. We talk all the time about how competitive it was and how any match could give you anything, and that's really what it was. And I mean, you look also in the playoff places, you see two teams that were promoted this season that secured spots in the playoffs. And likewise, you have two teams, maybe this is looking back a couple of years, but Spal, Benevento relatively recently in Serie A, both going down to Serie C. As you mentioned, Perugia just a season ago, one of those playoff places now going down. We've got a really fun battle still happening right now in the playoffs too. So why don't we talk about that for a little bit?
So playoffs, we have these 6 teams. Essentially, we have Bari and Parma sitting there waiting for the semifinals. So the first matches are the 5th against the 8th and the 6th against the 7th. So the first match that showed to us was Cagliari and Venezia. Yeah. And then 6th against 7th with the Südtirol Regina. Yeah. First match that came up was Südtirol Regina at Bolzano. This was hard to predict. Also because, mind you, it was in Bolzano, so there was that edge for Südtirol. But Regina is also quite famous to do quite well also away. It did end. It was a hard and tough fought. A lot of people are still talking about the super luck about Südtirol or the Cinderella dream, depending on what side you're looking at from that perspective. But it actually ends right at the end tail of the match, where Südtirol scores the goal and ends 1-0. Mind you, because of Serie B's regulations, if the match had ended in a tie, it would have gone to the extra time. After the extra time, if it was still 0-0 or 1-1, any tie, Südtirol would have passed.
By the way, just speaking again to the craziness of Serie B, so Südtirol played at home in a playoff match, which I presume was sold out because they've had a pretty good attendance record percentage-wise for most of the season. There were 5,000 people watching that match, 5,419. So, I mean, just amazing. Like, you look at the competition from, what would have been one of the smallest teams and seeing them move on into the next round. Pretty remarkable.
That's one definitely area of Italy that did not have a representative. Obviously, the team itself is fairly new. It's a merger between two other teams. Similar story, let's say, to Cittadella, but differently because Bolzano is a capital, a province within Trentino. But yeah, no, incredible. The other match was Cagliari-Venezia. What did you see out of that match?
Well, can you believe Lapadula again just continues scoring goals? Yeah, 2-1 to Cagliari. It was maybe not a surprising result in the end. This was I think we talked to Jeremy, and I believe he was saying something similar, like you're looking over your shoulder when you know Venezia are around because of Poyan Paolo and what he's been doing for Venezia and his beer drinking form after the matches and scoring goals and all that whole thing. But Venezia as a squad really had a serious amount of momentum at the end of the season. Again, this was a side that midway through were pretty rooted at the bottom of the table, and they made a lot of great adjustments, I think, all in the season. This is another club that unfortunately had a lot of turmoil in terms of different managers and things like that. But in the end, they fell just short to one of the favorites to win promotion. I don't think you can really say too much about that. And so actually, shame on me for not knowing this. I did not know the first leg was just a single solitary match. So
Correct.
Those games were played on Friday and I think maybe Saturday. We've now had, because we're recording this on Tuesday the 30th, we've had the first two. So the next round is a 2-leg matches played. Both of them kind of wild.
Hold on.
You
Just want to add one more thing.
All right.
More thing.
All
I want
right.
to say
Yeah.
that Cagliari-Venezia was also the battle between the two beasts, more or less what you said, Lapadula versus Poyan Paolo. And at the end, Lapadula did score and did win.
Right.
He will be announced as the MVP of Serie B
Yep.
and definitely the goal scorer of Serie B,
Yep.
Capocannoniere.
Good
So
insight.
yes, you're right. That was the first round. Now the winner of the first one was Südtirol. They will be playing, we haven't seen it yet, against Bari, while the winner of Cagliari-Venezia, which was Cagliari winning 2-1, would be playing against Parma. To your point, Cagliari is definitely one of the highest contenders to go through the playoffs, and I think the other one is Parma.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think on paper, that's how you would look at it, but I don't know. I mean, well, also, by the way, those two are playing each other, so it can't be those two. So,
well, okay, to your point before, the first round was a straight match. Now the semifinals are home and away, so they just played today, I guess, the last one. Yesterday was the first semifinal, first leg, and today was the second semifinal, first leg. So the first one was Südtirol Bari. That ended once again, Südtirol winning towards the end, 1-0 against Bari.
unbelievable.
That was-
I mean, by the way, towards the end, 90th minute, 90 plus 2 actually is when they scored their goal. Poor Jeremy must be shitting himself right now, but I feel like this is an amazing thing to see for Südtirol. They, of course, have an uphill battle to climb, so they'll be playing this next match at Bari. I guess if you talk to Jeremy, you might say this is in Südtirol's favor, but there's going to be a difference in attendance, I think, in this next leg that they play. But what
They're looking at 40,000. That's what the rumors are.
Yeah, I mean, I would believe that. But what an amazing story. Let's hope that this does end up happening. And obviously, we're still talking about semifinals here. But the Südtirol won up against Bari. They still have to do the business in a few days' time. What's remarkable about this is that this is only a couple of days rest for Südtirol. So they played on Friday, and they play again against Bari on Monday. And now you've got the subsequent match, I think is maybe this Friday again. And then an even wilder match that took place today.
What a match. So at Cagliari in Sardinia, because Parma, let's remember, the rule for Serie B is whoever's higher placed plays at home last. So in the return match, anyways, to give him that favor of the home field. Anyways, today was Cagliari Parma in Sardinia. First half ends 2-0 for Parma.
Parma, 2 quick goals, or quick enough goals anyway. 2 goals before 30 minutes. Parma is up, and it seems like they're flying high.
At that point, I thought, oh my God, Cagliari just did not did not come to the match, and Parma just has that power against them, or just that verve, as you said before, they have that momentum from the end of the season, similarly to Venezia. But what happens in the second half?
3 goals from Cagliari. And what's amazing is two of them come from, this is the Tinkerman at work here. Claudio Ranieri puts on Luvumbo at the 46th minute, right after the break, of course. So he scores the two goals, the first two goals. 21-year-old, I guess from Angola. I actually don't know very much about him, but only had like 7 passes in the whole game. But he gets 2 goals. And there's some drama here again. So he scores in the 68th minute, makes it 2-1. Lapadula ends up converting a penalty at the 85th minute. Now we're at 2-2, and Luvumbo again at the 89th minute. So really at the death, pretty much. Gives Cagliari the win. Yeah, I think it's going to be an incredible second leg in Parma. Both of these matches are just going to be so much fun. And we have to remember that the winner of each of these 2 matchups has to play the other for the chance to go up to Serie A. So I don't know. It's amazing. I don't know.
For the last spot of Serie B, right? For promotion for the last spot of Serie B.
I think it's probably obvious I would want Sud Tirol to go up. I think pretty much any casual fan would. But in this matchup, I'm not sure who I'm rooting for more here. I guess maybe a little bit more Cagliari, but I don't know.
Only based on the fanship side, where Parmigiani are friends with the cyclists, and that doesn't sit
so well.
Amazing, let's say.
Yeah.
I mean, both great teams. Parma has been dreaming to come back to Serie A earlier, and Cagliari may, steal it from them. Ultimately, I think everyone did not expect Frosinone, so I think it's Frosinone that stole, nothing against them, but it's Frosinone that stole that extra spot to one of the other ones. But, that's a different story. So, as you said before, the second leg is going to be played on Friday, June 2nd for Bari Sud Tirol. Parma Cagliari will be played on Saturday, June 3rd. And then the finals, because it'll be again 2-legged, will be on Thursday, June 8th and Sunday, June 11th. Last but not least is the play-outs, which was the actual first match.
Oh man, this is also crazy.
This was extremely crazy. You have a veteran of the play-outs, which is Cosenza, playing at Cosenza because I think it was because of the goal differential. Even though they ended at the same points, who had the lead was Brescia. So Brescia will be playing at home in the second leg. So the first leg was played at Cosenza, 1-0.
I mean, this is crazy. This match had just about everything. There was shot off the crossbar. I think that Brescia had a really, really late goal. I can't remember who's the youngster that scored it.
Nasty,
yeah. And it was just kind of this amazing moment if you watch the highlights for it, because the goal itself it's just a classic like scramble in the box. I think is a great effectively. It was a pretty good reaction save from the keeper, but he didn't really do a good job of getting it out of the way. So he pretty much palms it directly into Nasti's path, and he heads the ball over. And you think maybe for a half second the keeper claws it out because the ball kind of just crosses the line and it's there. And there's a little brief pause of did it cross over the line, and you see the Cosenza players pointing that it did and kind of running off to celebrate, and of course it did. It's just amazing because the Gigi Marula just bouncing at this point, and you can hear it as soon as that happens. You see the emotion. This is what football is all about. You see all of that passion kind of in that one kind of single period of time. So
the return is not going to be easy. It's going to be at Brescia. Brescia's not used to the playouts, but nevertheless they do have on the paper the better team, but at the same time they wouldn't be where they are if there wasn't any issues within their roster, right?
Right.
So the return, so the second leg of the playouts will be played Thursday. So we're recording today on Tuesday, but it'll be in a couple of days. But essentially, that will be the first determination of the result of who is going to be relegated. Now, mind you, that rumors have it, I was listening to Chiacchierata Calcistica, which is focusing a lot on the lower divisions and whatnot. And apparently, there are some teams that might not be able to enroll next year because of financial issues, and or perhaps depending on who comes up that might not be able to enroll to Serie B. So having said this, rumors have it that the playouts is almost useless, quote unquote useless, because if that ever happens, that means that the fourth spot to go down will not be relegated, might not be relegated.
Interesting. So are there Any rumors on which clubs would not be able to pay?
One seems to be Pordenone,
Okay.
which has already filed for bankruptcy, but they're under restructuring right now. So it's like the Chapter 11. So they're trying to do the restructuring. But rumors, and I think there wasn't one more. I can't remember what was the other one, but these 1/2 possibilities are giving that option that no matter what the result is from the playouts, might happen that both will be safe.
Very interesting. Okay. Well, it's drama nonetheless. Rooting for our also blue brethren in their return leg, or I guess the away leg now for them.
The Lupi of Cosenza.
That's right.
Now, before we wrap, there was a few things that I wanted to touch about.
Okay.
The first one is complimenti to the Griffoncini, have won Serie B of Primavera, also called Primavera 2.
Yep.
So that I just actually learned it recently. Bad on me. Forgive me. I didn't realize that there were two groups, and Girone A and Girone B, and Genoa won the Girone A, which unfortunately then they played against each other in order for it's the Super Cup or something like that against Lazio, and they won 4-0. The result is not, as we say in Italian, it's bugiardo, which is a lie in a sense, meaning that it's not reflective.
Fantastic word. I love
It's not reflective of what the match was all about. Unfortunately, they did not win that, but direct promotion, first spot, and they will be in the league where it counts, which is Primavera 1.
Excellent.
Second, different scenario, almost the opposite. The Griffoncine, which are the girls, the Genoa women, had a very tough year. They were close in the relegation area, but they came up, they showed up right in the last, where it meant the most. In the last two matches, they won both, especially the last one. They won 9-0, and they consolidated their stay, and we will be seeing them once again in Serie B women. To mention, out of the boys, we also had Maturro, which was called up from his national team under 20. He also scored, which was incredible. And then for the under 20 World Cup, thank you. The other one was also Lipani, which was called up as well, and he got some minutes as well.
That's right.
Talking about last thing about the Primavera, there was quite some interesting conversations happening from our CEO Blaskets. At the same time, there was also an interview with Spravati, which is our main lead responsible for the Primavera, or the youth teams in general anyways. They're saying they had a great year, not as it could have gone, because other teams, the under 18, under 17, under 16, etc., some have just lost at the end or whatnot. They said, we have had a great year, but at the same time, the competition is getting a lot stronger. We definitely need a lot more, a better field also for the Primavera. And this is one of the major conversations that our ownership is doing. The intention is to move our training grounds from where it is today to another location where you can have several fields, because one of the issues, for example, is you cannot play all of these leagues at the same time because there's not enough fields. So this is one of the defects, or a proper gym. Not that it's a bad gym, but technology, a lot of teams have invested a lot more faster than us, and definitely it's one of the things that 777 has on their roadmap, and it's something that needs to be dealt with ASAP. Obviously, the other conversation around that is the stadium, but that's a different topic.
Right, agreed.
Then, as we mentioned at the beginning, the Calciomercato will be having the whole summer to talk about it. It's way too early, so we're not going to be talking about a possibility of Bellotti. We're not going to be talking about a possibility of Faraone, and we're not going to talk about Piatek, even though Piatek seems that he might be going to Girona in Spain. It's still rumors because it's still too early anyway. But one thing that needs probably a little highlight, which is important also, especially to our books, is that Mr. Blessin might be the coach for Standard Liège next year.
Very interesting. So he's keeping it in the family, I guess.
Well, if Standard Liège needs a coach and we have a coach on our books And
Okay, that's a probably more rational way of why that would happen. That's funny. Yeah, that's right. We do technically owe the guy for a little while, so may as well put him to work.
Right.
That's funny.
We're paying him anyways.
Well,
right?
to be fair though, he did well in the Belgian league with Ostend, right? That's where he was
right.
before, I think.
That's
So
right.
that would hopefully not anger the Standard Liège fans. I still wonder how other fans. I did think this is a completely tangential topic because I do this all the time, but I thought it was nice. Unfortunately, as we all know, Hertha had been relegated from the Bundesliga, newly part of the 777 kind of constellation. But there was a nice little banner in their Curva section. I can't recall exactly how they call it, but in the Olympiastadion where they play, that it had said something about, our brothers are from Genoa. So it was kind of nice to see that. So
very nice.
I wonder how well we're received by some of the other fan clubs. It seems like in Vasco, there's maybe like a kind of casualness to it, but you might see more of that with Hertha Berlin. There's some pretty kind of diehard fans in that club, as Hamada would tell you. So
maybe we'll have him on during the summer for him to talk more a little bit about Hertha.
That's right.
All right. So I guess we are at a wrap. One thing I wanted to add also, obviously during the summer, we won't necessarily always have a weekly cadence. We'll try to do our best based on also the news, but we'll definitely have a lot to talk about, just starting from, as I mentioned earlier on, the who's coming and who's going, or who played well and who didn't. All right. So this is a wrap. Thank you for listening, first of all. Thank you, Serie B, for this wonderful year, and looking forward to a beautiful Serie A with the club più antico d'Italia, the most old team in Italy, coming back to the league where it counts.
That's right.
Drop us a line, send us a like.
All the socials.
Social media. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Never forget, always and forever.
Forza
Genoa. You've listened to La Lanterna, a spotlight on Italian football, a podcast powered by Genoani Si Resta. Thank you for listening and see you next week.